bridges fields of medicine in space and aviation, disaster and humanitarian efforts, expeditions, and military and special forces. He also founded Across the Divide expeditions and is co-creator of the Master of Science program in Extreme Medicine at Exeter University.
In actually a river in Western Papua New Guinea. I was one of the doctors on a medical ship there a few years ago. And it was after I made that walk through the river that I found out that the little bubbles coming up in the water were actually the bubbles of crocodiles in the water. And I don't think I'd have made that walk had I known it at the time. But that's me, doctor, rural health physician, bit of tropical stuff on the side. I'm currently a GP trainee.
To tell his story and why extreme medicine is so important to him. So, Will, over to you.
So, my name's Will Duffin, based in the UK, and I'm a jobbing family physician, but I'm also an extreme medic. I've treated heat exhaustion in the midst of an enormous salt plain in the Sahara Desert. I've evacuated people from near the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro with severe acute mountain sickness. I've strapped up a sprained ankle on Dead Woman's Pass high in the Peruvian Andes. And I've evacuated a patient with a serious head injury from a remote tropical island in the South Pacific. I've also managed a suspected stroke whilst being the doctor on a private luxury train company traveling across Siberia.
That you get to hang out with these legends. So everyone in this picture, there's paramedics, doctors, nurses,
need to adapt and kind of move forwards. The expedition space started to give that to me, and that's where, for me, that drew me to setting up an expedition of rowing across the Pacific Ocean. So back in 2015, 2016, With Mark, we kind of had very limited access, so I had to take all of the medical kit, but then that's where I surrounded myself with the right team. So, you know, I might have been the one.
So hi guys, thank you for that, Owen. That was fantastic. So my name is Jamie Pattison. I'm going to kind of give my experience of extreme medicine. My experience of extreme medicine is pretty much as Owen's just pertained to, is very much kind of day to day really, and then I get to go and do some cool stuff in between that. So I'm a paramedic by day. I work in Northumberland, which is in the north of England, right on the Scottish border. It's very remote. We don't have a lot of people here. I think we've got more 4x4 vehicles than people, and we have some of the most remote parts of England in our patch. So my job as a paramedic on day to day is to respond to emergency medical service calls. So as you guys in America would have 911, we have 999 in the UK, and I respond to a myriad of complaints from patients. So trauma calls, RT, road traffic collisions, to the medical heart attacks, strokes, and everything in between. And have even managed to deliver a couple of babies in my time as well. I absolutely love my time on the road and working on the ambulances. Again, to echo Owen, it's very much all about the patients for me. I really enjoy going to meet people, hearing their stories, and asking the questions from people who've lived long and full lives, and getting some amazing pieces of advice I wouldn't get to have in any other role in life. Alongside my role as a paramedic on the ambulance service, I work and volunteer for a Northumberland National Park Mountain Rescue Team. These are some of the guys here. This is probably one of the coolest photographs I've ever got to be part of. So we provide a search and rescue service all throughout Northumberland. So we cover 3,500 square kilometres, and we will respond to rescues, missing person searches, and everything in between. So that's taken me to respond to downed aircraft. It's taken me to respond to people who are trapped in blizzards, and I've rescued a fair few people who've suffered traumatic injuries as well. This photograph, some of you guys may have seen, actually. It kind of went viral after the Beast from the East a couple of years ago. And this is me on a main road in Northumberland going over the Scottish border, which, as you can see, was totally whited out with snow. And we ended up having to rescue, I think it was about 18 people out of around 10 cars. So taking everyone back from the kind of single traveller who were just a bit chilly, to a whole family of 4 with all of their suitcases and things as well, and working out how to get them down off this mountain and into the back of my rescue Land Rover was quite an interesting challenge. As part of my role in Mountain Rescue, I am the medical officer, so I'm responsible for all of the medical training, all of the governance, and all of the everything that happens medically to the team, basically. So I spend a lot of time counting bandages. It's not all nice flights and good views, but that's one of my biggest rewards, is getting to share my experience and share my skills with the guys in the team and bring their knowledge on, and be able to provide a gold standard care in some of the most harshest environments there are to offer. And be able to provide a gold standard care in some of the most harshest environments. I am So this is me on a personal trip in Norway, and sharing that experience with my friends and
on the tennis one-to-one. I was her performance.
and bring their knowledge on, and be able to provide a good, harshest environments there are to offer. I am
Good evening. Welcome to the Explorers Club Monday Night Lecture Series. Tonight, we'll introduce you to the field of extreme medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Tim Radke, a member of the Board of Directors of the Explorers Club. In this program, we'll introduce you to a wide range of healthcare professionals who are also extreme medicine practitioners working the world's most remote corners. Following tonight's presentation, some of our presenters will be joining me for a question and answer session. I invite you to submit your questions, which I will ask on your behalf. The evening will be moderated by Dr. Mark Hannaford, an explorer who has led or taken part in expeditions on 5 continents. He is the founder of World Extreme Medicine, which bridges fields of medicine in space and aviation, disaster and humanitarian efforts, expeditions, and military and special forces. He also founded Across the Divide expeditions and is co-creator of the Master of Science program in Extreme Medicine at Exeter University. This program prepares medical professionals for operations in austere, low-resource environments. He is a former Special Forces Reserve soldier and an award-winning photographer. Mark and one of our other presenters tonight, Dr. Mark McArthur, are Explorers Club 50 honorees. Mark, welcome to the Explorers Club.
Hello and good evening, and it's a real pleasure to join you at the Explorers Club this evening. And thank you, Tim Radke, Joe Rody, and Anne Passer for inviting us. My name's Mark Hannaford. I'm the co-founder and director of World Extreme Medicine. Now, World Extreme Medicine brings together a huge variety of medical specialists to improve and to educate, to push forward and at the boundaries of extreme medicine. I guess the question is, what is extreme medicine? So for us, extreme medicine is medicine delivered in remote areas, in expedition settings, in disaster and humanitarian settings, and in tactical medicine. My story originally started as an expedition leader. I wanted to run expeditions where I had professional medics supporting those expeditions. And I found as we did that, we attracted some amazing medics from so many different disciplines, from those different sectors I've just mentioned, but also aviation medicine and diving medicine. But people tended to be siloed, and we wanted to build a worldwide community of people where those silos were broken down to build a platform where the knowledge was shared, where passions were shared, where opportunities and networking happened, where actually medicine was pushed forward in these remote areas, ultimately to deliver medicine in low resource environments better. And I'm joined this evening by an incredibly eclectic team of FEWM faculty, and also by fellow Explorers Club 50 member Mark McArthur. We're at the moment broadcasting primarily from the UK, but we have faculty all over the world, and in fact have teams working all over the world at the present time. So given that there are so many of us, and without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Dr. Will Duffin, who I have the pleasure of being my medical director for World Extreme Medicine, to tell his story and why extreme medicine is so important to him. So Will, over to you.
So my name's Will Duffin, based in the UK, and I'm a jobbing family physician, but I'm also an extreme medic. I've treated heat exhaustion in the midst of an enormous salt plain in the Sahara Desert. I've evacuated people from near the summit of Mount Kilimanjaro with severe acute mountain sickness. I've strapped up a sprained ankle on Dead Woman's Pass high in the Peruvian Andes. And I've evacuated a patient with a serious head injury from a remote tropical island in the South Pacific. I've also managed a suspected stroke whilst being the doctor on a private luxury train company traveling across Siberia. And I've helped support train fellow medics in remote corners of Myanmar. But I'm just one of a large global movement that is World Extreme Medicine. These are friends and colleagues who are bucking convention. We're risk takers, rule breakers, and pioneers. People like Josie, who's a qualified nurse. She's delivered medical care in refugee camps, places like Cox's Bazar in Bangladesh and Bentiu in South Sudan, with Médecins Sans Frontières. People like Mike Barrett, who's a US physician who has specialized in aerospace medicine. He's been the flight physician for 2 missions into space. And Sarah Spelsberg, she's an emergency medicine physician's assistant who works out in the Aleutian Islands, out in the Bering Sea, a rugged wilderness where she's transporting patients in helicopters past actively erupting volcanoes. And Dr. Glenn Singleman, he's an emergency medicine physician based in Australia. He was the medic for James Cameron's exploration into the Challenger Deep, the Marianas Trench, the deepest place on Earth. And he's also an accomplished wingsuit pilot and high altitude base jumper, having set numerous world records. So as you can see, extreme medics are a fairly eclectic bunch. And extreme medicines, yes, you need the technical medical skills, you need the expedition skills, but you also need certain other attributes that we call the soft skills. So to be an effective extreme medicine, what we do is we try to professionalize the practice of healthcare in these environments. And we try to, we are building a breed of medic that is a problem solver, a medic who's able to work under pressure, who's able to muck in with the rest of the expedition and have the phenomenal work ethic, who's able to improvise and use what they've got, form functional rather than ideal solutions to any problem, that can adapt and work with the environment and has immense physical and mental resilience. Not only can they take care of themselves in these environments, but they're also there to look after others. And at World Extreme Medicine, we are the champion of this global movement. We seek to amplify the learnings, the benefits and the application of extreme medicine in its many guises. And this is very similar to the important work you're doing at the Explorers Club. You are a movement that celebrates exploration and endeavor. So we're doing exactly the same for the practice of medicine. And a big part of our remit is to widen access and broaden appeal of this specialty. We're aware that there's a diversity crisis within this arena. So we're really trying to lower the barrier to access and welcome colleagues from across the globe, from different corners of the globe, from a range of different backgrounds who are practicing this work to share the learning and the love. And we believe that the practice of extreme medicine, not only does it benefit the clinicians in terms of their own skills and their own well-being, it also benefits the patients, not just the patients that are in these extreme environments, but also the skills that they then bring back to their usual clinic, to their hospital ward, wherever they usually work. Those skills of problem solving, adaptability and resilience are skills that every health system needs. And so that's what we're doing. That's our mission at World Extreme Medicine. Now, you're very, very fortunate in this session in that we have lots of extreme medics and friends and colleagues of Mark and ours who've agreed to share their experiences of extreme medicine with you today. So I'll hand over now to my colleague, Dr. Laura McArthur. Laura, over to you.
So I'm going to talk to you about medicine in the tropics. With World Extreme Medicine, I tend to be the one covering a bit of the tropical stuff, a bit of the public health stuff. And I'm going to tell you why I love it. So that's me in actually a river in Western Papua New Guinea. I was one of the doctors on a medical ship there a few years ago. And it was after I made that walk through the river that I found out that the little bubbles coming up in the water were actually the bubbles of crocodiles in the water. And I don't think I'd have made that walk had I known it at the time. But that's me, doctor, rural health physician, bit of tropical stuff on the side. I'm currently a GP trainee in Cornwall, but do a lot of expedition work and emergency medicine work in a variety of different countries. So why do I love the tropics? Well, they're such challenging locations. I mean, we had to walk through that mud for about 2 kilometres into those clinics. You can see the boat there of the local villages. So it's 2 weeks on a dugout tree canoe to their closest hospital. So you really are completely on your own and with people who really have nothing. So if something happens, you're it. There's nothing to back you up. And I quite like that. It's a challenge. So that's where I was at that point. So I don't know if anyone knows Papua New Guinea, but that was the Western province. It's one of the poorest provinces, and it's a 24 to 30 hour big ship, sort of cruise ship, travel from Port Moresby, the capital. So it is a long, long way. And up that river are some populations who've never seen a white man. And we were exploring, doing clinics with them. So you get a bit of geography, a bit of local people, and that real sense of exploration, as you were talking about before, Will. And this was where our clinics were. So I was sat in a hut, river coming in. There would generally be someone taken by a crocodile about once a month in these villages, and that was just normal to them. TB is a real problem, extremely drug-resistant TB. So we were part of a program trying to improve TB recognition and TB treatment in the country, but trying to involve local people. So, another reason why I love extreme medicine, you're involving local populations in trying to better their country's own healthcare. And it's just so, so rewarding. And then you take something like that, where you've got relatively common injuries that happen in the UK and, America. I'm aware we're talking to New York. But then try and deal with that if you've got to walk through copious amounts of mud, or, that eye might be very easy in a Western world hospital. But actually, if you're on an expedition and that's one of your colleagues, how do you stop them going blind? If you're a pianist and they've lopped off the end of their finger, how do you ensure that they keep that when you're in the middle of nowhere? This was in Darwin Hospital. So Darwin does have a hospital, but again, I don't know if you can see on the photo of the chap, he's got a dent in his head. And, yes, luckily I had the CT scan afterwards, but those injuries are happening all the time in the communities, not in Darwin. And being a medic out there, you don't have the CT scan. You've got to figure out what to do. And it's that constant challenge, which I love. And of course, tropical medicine in the tropics also includes areas of altitude. And it's just that constant thought process of, okay, am I vomiting due to high altitude, or am I vomiting due to some other random infection? And it's just that variety in obviously beautiful places that is just so addictive. So again, this was in Tanzania, looking down on one of the volcanoes, and members of our group were vomiting, and we actually had a guide who was drunk and had to go down, and as an extreme medic you get to then take over, which is a positive or negative depending on how you look at it. I personally love that challenge. And there's the extra distractions. So the little bird on the left, we were in the middle of a vaccine clinic in Papua New Guinea, and he was nicking the vials of the vaccine out of the boxes, so that we kept having to chase this bird after the vials. And the scorpion is actually the scorpion that bit me. So there's lots of critters in these places. And as I've said already, local people, just incredible. So this little boy on his dad's lap had cerebral malaria, so malaria affecting the brain, and he'd become essentially disabled within weeks. And just watching the local population come together, get him through that mud, get him on the boat, trying to teach him how to smile again, teaching him how to say yes and no without being able to speak, was just amazing. And again, This is the Hadza tribe in Central East Africa, who, if you're interested, there's a lot of really interesting research about their gut microbes. And again, it's that medicine in extreme places that you can bring back home as well that I truly love. Things like leprosy, we just don't see that in the Western world anymore, and it's just everywhere in some of these places. Jellyfish. This chap obviously didn't do too well. That's not a hospital bed, unfortunately. If you make it to the hospital, having been stung by a box jelly, the rule is you survive. If you don't get off the beach, you don't. And again, just knowing little bits of that knowledge and being the one to put it all together is really nice. So this little one is a young boy, and I think you can see his back there doesn't look quite straight. So he has spinal TB. His belly is also huge. So he has parasitic infections. And then the trauma caused by a knife that big in a child. There's just everything out there. It's an amazing place to work. And the job doesn't stop when you get home. So I've always got my tropical brain on. This is leishmaniasis. And this chap caught that in an expedition I was on in Costa Rica. This only appeared 3 months down the line. So again, you've got that follow-up, again, in the Western world with some extra investigations that, again, is just so interesting. And it's remote, it's dangerous. So this is Cales Crossing in the Northern Territory, and that whole river is full of crocs, and even really experienced local guides get taken. And you're in that environment, you're camping, you're walking. Australia, yes, it's a Western country, but it's huge. And I know in America, you'll be much more used to that than we will in the UK. But, the drive from Darwin to that Red Star is about 5-6 hours. And we came across a trauma. 6 people in a pickup truck. I think 3 were dead on scene and 4 were seriously injured, had been there for hours, and it's you, that's it. And a 6-hour drive when there's that kind of trauma is not easy. And that's the view. There's literally nothing. That's where we were working on them in 40-degree heat. And as I've said, it's just that environment adds so many challenges. There's so many layers. It's an exciting place to be. It's a beautiful place to be. But there's crocs, there's bugs, there's everything. And snakes, of course. And that's why I love the tropics. But yeah, please feel free to ask me any questions should you wish. And I will hand on to the next person.
So I'm going to take you back 9 years to 2012, and I left Cornwall with 2 friends in a really beaten up old Land Rover, and we went on the journey of our lives. We travelled for 9 months together, and we drove down the east side of Africa down to Cape Town, and we had quite the party when we arrived there. 9 months later, we travelled through 30 countries, 21,792 miles, and 19 punctures. And on the way, we'd passed through all sorts of landscapes. We'd been shot at by bandits. We'd been arrested in Somalia, and we arrived there as friends. And it was really the culmination of 7 years of traveling and different trips for me. You can see here a picture of me when I was 20, and I was traveling overland in Kenya with my friend, just on a couple of motorbikes, with very little planning or knowledge of what we were doing, really. But when we got back from this long trip, this Cornwall to Cape Town, as we called it, I was having a conversation with a friend. We were both doing a diploma in tropical medicine in Liverpool, and she told me about something called the Royal Geographical Society. I thought I should probably have a look at this. So I went along to a weekend that the RGS run, which is called the Explore Conference. And I suddenly realized that there's all sorts of people out there who are just like me. And I had no idea. I had no idea that there's this community of people who love exploring the world. They love understanding other cultures. They seek to continually improve themselves and the cultures the people they come into contact with. And they look like that, some of them. So if we fast forward to now, here we are. I'm a proud dad. I'm a GP or a family doctor. I also work as a senior A&E doctor, or emergency medicine, I think you guys call that. And I'm also an advanced doctor responding for our ambulance service here. And I've worked in and supported expeditions across over 60 different countries, and I've been lucky enough to work in a variety of environments, whether that's hot or high or dry, both polar regions. I've had a fantastic life already, and I'm incredibly grateful for that. And what I've come to realize in my experience of sort of extreme medicine over the last couple of decades is that extreme is really just a matter of opinion. It's a matter of perspective, and I think it very much depends on what is your normal. You can see here a picture which is an emergency laparotomy that I'm assisting in a bush hospital in Zambia. And I can remember clearly halfway through this operation, we had a power cut, and the theatre went pitch black, and the African surgeon just very quietly said, "Richard, can you get my phone out of my pocket for me?" And he continued the laparotomy by the green light of his Nokia 3310. And for him, he was very calm, and that felt very normal. So I think it really brought home to me, extreme medicine is all about perspective. From my perspective, it's an incredibly exciting thing to be involved with. I think it's an evolving speciality in its own right, just as something like emergency medicine is, or gastroenterology or anything like that. And I think the situations that we encounter within extreme medicine are so broad, and the environments are so varied, that it's an incredibly rewarding thing to be involved with. But I think there's also huge challenges. Because of that variety, it's very hard to conduct really meaningful research and to sort of standardize practice across the speciality. So it's incredibly challenging as well. I'm lucky enough to work for FEWM as well. And when I found the FEWM family, I realized that there were other people out there that make me feel normal as well, you know, and the other people who inspire me to keep doing what I do. And the reason that I love being involved with FEWM is that for me, it's the best way of keeping up to date with my peers within extreme medicine. And it's the best way of informing the next generation of extreme and remote medics. You can see a picture there. I'm lucky enough to run the Alpine medicine course for FEWM in Slovenia pre-COVID. And there's a couple of pictures of some of the learners on that course there. And for me, you know, this is the best way of keeping up to date. So yeah, for me, really, I think extreme medicine is all about delivering the best care wherever it's needed, and you know, ultimately, wherever there are human beings in the world, they are going to need healthcare in some form or another. Thanks for your time.
So my name's Laura Penhaul, and I come at it from a slightly different angle to what you most probably have just heard already. My background actually was as a physio, having done sort of 12 years in an elite Olympic sport in the UK. I've worked with being head physio with downhill skiing. I've worked with Paralympians and Olympians, athletics, and in the ski field, and more latterly for the Tokyo Games was head physio with the British sailing team. So my kind of context is slightly different from a point of view of how I then sort of went from a physio career into the extreme medicine, and kind of how it came about was more the fact that personally, I always wanted to flip the table. So when I was working with Paralympic athletes, I really wanted to understand what was the mindset that they faced when they were thrown a curveball. What was it that they drew on when potentially, you know, they were faced with a curveball that would have made them question, you know, giving up basically, but they didn't give up, and they've drawn on something more powerful than that to go on and achieve greater things than what they maybe have done before. And it made me always question, why do we wait for adversity to come to us to realize what we're capable of? And so because of that, in that environment, it then made me draw on wanting to do more expeditions myself. You know, doing triathlons, running, those sorts of things wasn't really mentally pushing me. It wasn't really making me challenge and take me out of my comfort zone and strip back the basics of survival and kind of what we actually need to adapt and kind of move forwards. The expedition space started to give that to me, and that's where, for me, that drew me to setting up an expedition of rowing across the Pacific Ocean. So back in 2015, 2016, I, instead of being on the support side of things, I flipped the table and kind of wanted to be at the center and feel it myself. Because if I understand it myself, if I put myself through it, I feel like that gives me more rapport with the people that I work with and more understanding, which is more holistic than it will be the twisted ankle that is facing me with in a physio career. So I then kind of put a team together and we rowed the Pacific, first ever all-female crew and first ever falls crew to ever go from America to Australia. So we set 2 world records in doing so. It took us 9 months. Was supposed to take us 6 months, but, you know, expeditions never go quite to plan. And through that process, you know, I learned so much, not just about the rowing. You know, everybody asked about the journey, but it was getting to the start line. It was the preparation. And it's all, to me, it's all about who you then put around you to make that team successful. And that was more than just me delivering it. So to me, the expedition world, it kind of embodies all of that stuff. It kind of opens the doors to sort of, you know, as a physio, what are my boundaries of safe working? But what do I then need to sort of support myself with? And how do you look after yourself in those environments? Because the thing is we take it for granted to deliver all the time, but actually we've got to look after ourselves in order to be able to be sustainable in who we support. And crucially, to sort of make sure I'm operating safely, I surround myself by the experts. So with the likes of World Extreme Medicine, that has absolutely opened the doors. I've got the guys that are on the team here from a trauma perspective, having their expertise, but I may be the one that's delivering it, but I've got them at the end of the phone. And, you know, the crucial thing for us is all about the human factors. You know, it's all about kind of safe working, collaborative working, looking after each other, looking after ourselves to get the best out of the environment and the sort of the projects and the things that we're doing. And that's crucial. If you've not got a team and a collaborative working, you're not going to last too long in expeditions, as most of you will know on this call. From my approach, it's all about prevention versus cure. So I very much come at it from a performance perspective. I want to push boundaries of performance. And in order to do that, I need to optimize health, and then I can optimize and make the small percentage gains to really sort of see where we're capable of. And I love the environmental science and how that implicates and influences our physiology and all of those things as a human function. So I've kind of applied it from an elite performance end. I worked with Naomi Osaka on the tennis one-to-one. I was her performance manager. And as I said, I've worked in elite sport, but I love understanding the minutiae of performance and how to push the physiology and applying that in the expedition stuff, both from having done it myself and now in a performance management role supporting others. So for instance, on the left-hand side here, we've got one of the guys from the Adaptive Grand Slam who he got blown up at war, lost his arm and significantly injured his leg, and has now been on the team where they've sort of summited they've achieved the 2 poles and the Grand Slam 7 summits of the world. So I love that because it ends up going into how do I preserve his limb? How do I sort of make sure he's able to achieve independence on doing these climbs and those sorts of things, and he's able to look after himself. And beyond that, as a physio, it means I've traveled the world, and here I'm with Mark Beaumont, where we sort of traveled the world under 80 days by bike, and I was his performance manager, so making sure his focus was about keeping those wheels turning and really optimizing his health and his performance, but really keeping him on that border of over tipping versus kind of actually still getting that performance gain. and you know, in those environments, I'm traveling in a camper van, for instance, with Mark, but when I did the row, I was in a rowing boat. So knowing what your environment is, knowing what sort of access you've got. With Mark, we kind of had very limited access, so I had to take all of the medical kit, but then that's where I surrounded myself with the right team. So, you know, I might have been the one delivering stuff on the road, but I'm very crucial to sort of highlight, actually, there was a much bigger team that I surrounded myself with to make sure I could provide the optimal care for that athlete. And that even came down to the point of 8 days in, and he has an accident and I'm having to do dentistry work. Now, as a physio, I'm definitely no dentist, but thankfully, due to World Extreme Medicine, you know, I picked up the phone when we were in Russia. I picked up the phone to Mark from World Extreme, as you've heard of from today already, and asked him, like, do we know any dentist that would be able to give me some advice? And straight away he drew me to Berger Langdana, who's an absolute legend in this. And straight away I'm on the phone to Berger, and he's given me all the top tips of how to do some dental work. And so that's you know, I ended up having to do that, which preserved it, meant he didn't get an infection, and then we were able to deal with it. So that was 8 days into an 80-day trip. And if I hadn't dealt with that properly, then that potentially could have been the end of his world record attempt. But, you know, you're also faced with significant road traffic accidents, and you'll hear from people on the call shortly, the paramedics and people that work in trauma. You know, as a physio in elite sport, I do trauma care, but, you know, it's not what I face every day at all. So having the support and expertise behind me of medics, docs, paramedics that were able to guide us through how to deal with a trauma situation, and one was a life threat, unfortunately a fatality, and I had more kit than what the paramedics had turning up to us in Russia. So it was really crucial, and that's what is the strength of this WEM family, I would say, is that we can all draw on the expertise, support each other for the benefit of those that we're working with. And really that's kind of my input, and that's sort of my part of the story, I guess, and why I love working in extreme environments, because I can apply performance, and I love pushing boundaries of performance and seeing what we can get most out of the human body, and then bring that back to the day-to-day as well. So I'd love to hand over now to Owen, who I know is out in Istanbul right now. So I'll pass over to him so you can hear some of his great stories too.
Okay, so we've heard from an absolute plenary of colleagues over this past half an hour. So my name's Owen Walker, the World Extreme Medicine Trauma Lead. And in this session, I really just want to echo everything that's already been said around not only the journey that is extreme medicine, but the community that's extreme medicine as well, because we are actually, through tried and tested experience, stronger together, stronger in plenary, stronger in consensus opinion. So my background is a paramedic for 20 years. I've been on the helicopter, worked for London's air ambulance for 10 years, worked on the push bikes for 4 years as a paramedic, very much as a flight paramedic and a critical care paramedic for 5 years. I currently work for ICRC, so the International Committee of Red Cross in Cairo, and I'm just here in Istanbul at the moment. So, like I said before, actually, the beauty of extreme medicine is that you get to hang out with these legends. So everyone in this picture, there's paramedics, doctors, nurses, emergency department physicians. There is ACPs, so advanced clinical practitioners, dentists, and it really is around sharing experiences with each other and just learning from each other. And that's really where the power lies, and the experience comes from. As Laura said, a notion towards, really, my experience really belies human factors, and it's about mitigating human factors. They say about 80 to 90% of expeditions are human factors. So it's not actually, as we know, clinical medicine. It's actually team dynamics and mitigation of human factors. So you really have to become almost expert at dealing with and offsetting human factors, recognizing them in yourself and others, and then mitigating them. And I've got full dispensation to share these videos and slides. It's really about the patients as well. So this is Victoria Labreck. Victoria had her left leg taken from her in a road traffic collision. And it's moments like this which really make the difference, to see the rehabilitation and to see the overcoming through adversity. And this really brings home the why we do the job in the first place. So this is Dan Richards, another patient that we went to on the helicopter. Lost his right arm and pretty much broke every bone in his body. He has become a big advocate of World Extreme Medicine and spoken at the conference as well, as has Zoe Hitchcock, an ex-cardiac arrest survivor who now leads a full life. And again, it's all about the patients, and it's all about seeing them living a full life beyond their point of injury, and doing life with them as well. So actually, yeah, and that for me is where the job satisfaction lies. So I'm just finish off with this. It's in extreme medicine. I don't think any of us practice extreme medicine or indeed our day jobs without having a passion for it. So it's about finding your why and returning to your why on a daily basis, sort of re-signing up to your why that we all do this job through adversity and through some pretty changeable dynamic situations, but returning to that passion. All right, thanks guys. I will hand over to our next colleague.
So hi guys, thank you for that, Owen. That was fantastic. So my name is Jamie Pattison. I'm going to kind of give my experience of extreme medicine. My experience of extreme medicine is pretty much as Owen's just pertained to, is very much kind of day to day, really. And then I get to go and do some cool stuff in between that. So I'm a paramedic by day. I work in Northumberland, which is in the north of England, right on the Scottish border. It's very remote. We don't have a lot of people here. I think we've got more 4x4 vehicles than people. And we have some of the most remote parts of England in our patch. So my job as a paramedic on day to day is to respond to emergency medical service calls. So as you guys in America would have 911, we have 999 in the UK, and I respond to a myriad of complaints from patients. So trauma calls, RTs, road traffic collisions, to the medical heart attacks, strokes, and everything in between, and have even managed to deliver a couple of babies in my time as well. I absolutely love my time on the road and working on the ambulances. Again, to echo Owen, it's very much all about the patients for me. I really enjoy going to meet people, hearing their stories, and asking the questions from people who've lived long and full lives, and getting some amazing pieces of advice I wouldn't get to have in any other role in life. Alongside my role as a paramedic on the ambulance service, I work and volunteer for a Northumberland National Park Mountain Rescue Team. These are some of the guys here. This is probably one of the coolest photographs I've ever got to be part of. So we provide a search and rescue service all throughout Northumberland. So we cover 3,500 square kilometres, and we will respond to rescues, missing person searches, and everything in between. So that's taken me to respond to downed aircraft. It's taken me to respond to people who are trapped in blizzards, and I've rescued a fair few people who've suffered traumatic injuries as well. This photograph, some of you guys may have seen, actually. It kind of went viral after the Beast from the East a couple of years ago. And this is me on a main road in Northumberland going over the Scottish border, which, as you can see, was totally whited out with snow. And we ended up having to rescue, I think it was about 18 people out of around 10 cars. So taking everyone back from the kind of single traveller who were just a bit chilly, to a whole family of 4 with all of their suitcases and things as well, and working out how to get them down off this mountain and into the back of my rescue Land Rover was quite an interesting challenge. As part of my role in Mountain Rescue, I am the medical officer, so I'm responsible for all of the medical training, all of the governance, and all of the everything that happens medically to the team, basically. So I spend a lot of time counting bandages. It's not all nice flights and good views, but that's one of my biggest rewards, is getting to share my experience and share my skills with the guys in the team and bring their knowledge on, and be able to provide a gold standard care in some of the most harshest environments there are to offer. I am a self-confessed Chinophile, which means I really, really love the cold. Any opportunity to get cold, I will take as much as possible. So this is me on a personal trip in Norway and sharing that experience with my friends and family. In 2016, I went out to Greenland and I undertook the Iceman Challenge, which was a race at the time was billed one of the world's toughest Arctic ski races, which I managed to win as part of a team of 3. And this is us crossing the sea ice in eastern Greenland out there. So again, part of the extreme medicine experience for me is not only sharing your skills and look after people, and doing the medicine, it's the experiences in nature as well. This is in northern Norway under a sky full of northern lights, and getting to share those experiences with the expedition teams and people you've been with for a week or so, it brings the most fantastic memories and the most fantastic experiences available on this planet, I believe. And again, I do like being cold, and one of the coldest times I've ever had an experience was this photograph when I was training for the Iceman, and this is actually in Scotland, not so far from my home. And as you can see, it was pretty cold that day. So my big thing is, and my big message today, guys, is you don't have to go to the far end of the world to have an adventure and have an amazing experience. I've had some absolutely awesome experiences which have helped me in my extreme medicine career, right on my doorstep. So adventure is out there. You don't have to go far to find it. And a lot of the time, there are little moments of magic that I think a lot of people pass by. And these are some snowflakes that I managed to photograph on my waterproofs one day out in the snowy mountains. So there are adventures all over the place to be had, and there are medics who come and look after you. Part of my skills in mountain rescue, and I transfer to expeditions, is how do I rescue a patient who's stuck on a rock ledge up in the air when we can't access them, and how do we bring the skills to do that? Sharing that experience, I've had the privilege to be part of World Extreme Medicine for a few years now, and I get to come on the courses and meet a range of that. And again, as Rich said, that group of people who are exactly like me, who have a passion for medicine and a passion for the extreme and a passion for the world, and share my skills and experiences with them. Again, as a specialist in the cold, part of sharing that experience will be avalanche rescue. So we train specific skills in that. And there's a massive amount of human factors and stuff in that, which is really, really fascinating. And as a paramedic, I'll share my experiences of road traffic collisions, how to rescue somebody from a car in the snow and out when they're out on expedition, to my experience as a swift water rescue technician. How do we deal with the risks in situations in swift water as well? And indeed, how do you land a helicopter in the middle of a forest? These are all experiences that I've had as a paramedic in mountain rescue that I try and bring to the World Extreme Medicine courses, and I try and share those experiences so that people can learn from my mistakes that I've made over the years, and I can certainly make their transition into expanding their career much, much easier and straightforward. As we've all pertained to it, we get to work with some amazing people, and there's a photograph of us just teaching on a course in Wales, teaching in Slovenia with the Slovenian Mountain Rescue, and again, this is the delegates in the Slovenian course. And I get to bring those skills back to the team in Mountain Rescue Northumberland. This year has been really interesting. COVID's obviously been a big challenge, so thank you very much for listening, guys.
As you've all heard, this extraordinary group of medics from World Extreme Medicine have a wide myriad of experiences across several different extreme environments. Mine is a little bit different than most. So I'm an emergency physician with a background in biomedical engineering. I was responsible, then the PI for the first Irish experiment that flew on board the International Space Station back in 2006, Project Casper. So I'm a self-professed space cadet. I love engineering, I love medicine, I love the combination of both of those. We went and flew an experiment looking at the use of cardiopulmonary coupling for monitoring sleep disturbance and disruption in astronauts. From there, I ended up at Kennedy Space Center. So for 3 years, I was part of a triage team at Kennedy Space Center, combining kind of emergency physicians, nurses, paramedics. And effectively what we did was we were camped at the outer mark of the 3-mile limit every time the space shuttle launched and landed. So I got to basically live my dream and effectively see the last 15 space shuttle missions and combine that component of extreme environments, medicine, critical care, emergency medicine, biomedical research, and so on at Kennedy Space Center, combining all of those components together. For the last 10 years, I've also been lucky enough to combine that experience of teaching and training combat medicine for special forces units. So we take SEAL teams, Green Berets, Ranger teams, and we effectively train them to combine their medicine with their tactics. So dealing in worst case scenarios. So it used to be at the initial components of conflict around the world that when we were dealing in Iraq and Afghanistan, you were no more than kind of 60 minutes from the equivalent of a level 1 trauma center. Over the last several years, those conflicts have effectively evolved where now we have teams that are working out of Africa where you could be 1 to 2 days in relation to trying to evacuate somebody. And this has evolved into a component of medicine for these teams known as prolonged field care. So you have teams that are comprised of effectively operators or shooters who have one medic who is effectively dealing with a critical care scenario with nothing but the medical ruck on his back along with the rest of his loadout. So we deal in what I call the 4 horsemen of prolonged field care: severe burns, sepsis, TBI, and crush. Combine that with catastrophic hemorrhage or multimodal trauma component. And then we teach these medics to effectively go and deal with these patients and then do a prolonged evacuation over the course of several days from, be it the middle of Africa or somewhere else, back to kind of civilization. So combining all of those components together in a medical format can be quite challenging for a lot of these teams and then supporting them effectively around the world. For the last 10 years, I've been involved with a program at NASA called Nemo, NASA's Extreme Environment Mission Operations, where we take astronauts and we stick them into the world's only undersea habitat down off the Florida Keys called Aquarius. So this is my crew from 2016, the Nemo 21 crew, a team of half scientists, half astronauts. And what we effectively do is we use this environment as a commander upgrade program for the astronauts getting ready to command the International Space Station, and then for the development of new tools, techniques, technologies for the next generation of spaceflight. During this particular mission, I was part of the team that was first to sequence DNA underwater, so using the MinION DNA sequencer. And what this was actually a trial run for the sequence and the technology that would then be used on board the International Space Station about 3 months later by Kate Rubins. The other component that we do is we spend about 8 hours underwater every single day developing and using the coral reef as an analog for exogeology. So during this mission, we actually went and planted the world's deepest coral nursery, which was a fairly significant feat, wearing these Kirby Morgan stainless steel helmets with these 1,000-foot umbilicals and effectively spending about 6 to 8 hours on the sea floor. My day job is a little bit different. When COVID kicked off, I'm actually based out of Las Vegas. I was asked by the city of Las Vegas to oversee what was called the ISAQ, a 500-bed isolation quarantine facility for the city's homeless population, as we expected the waves to come through similar to what was in New York. So we effectively had a 500-bed unit to try and contain, quarantine, and provide medical care for the city's homeless population. Since then, I actually go and I run a 40-bed medical respite for the homeless population of the city. And effectively what I tell my teams is we have a small facility with 40 beds where we have the mobile outreach teams, community paramedics, a 24-hour nursing team. And effectively, I would tell all my teams, if we have a patient that is at risk of losing life, limb, or eyesight due to homelessness on the streets, if they're not in hospital, they also belong underneath our care. I'm also president of the country's largest volunteer search and rescue team. We run about 150 missions a year, ranging from rural, wilderness, urban searches, combination out of Red Rock Canyon and some of the national parks surrounding kind of Nevada, Arizona, Utah, and so on. I'm also the dive medicine lead for World Extreme Medicine. So every year we run a dive medicine course for physicians and then for advanced paramedics as well. And this is also based out of the Aquarius undersea habitat. We give physicians and medics the opportunity not only to be instructed by some of the best diving medics in the world, but they also have the opportunity to go and wear the Kirby Morgan stainless steel. And they actually get to spend a night overnight in Aquarius, get to understand the saturation diving systems through some of the best experts in the field, and then begin to see and feel what it's like to actually go and learn the intricacies of diving medicine, combine all of those components with emergency medicine, and then ensure that they understand that if they have to support a dive medicine trip, divers in any way, shape, or form, that we're able to bring that experience to the fore. It is the only course of its kind, and I feel that it's one of the most intricate, involved dive medicine pieces that is brought to the table literally almost anywhere in the world. So that's just a little kind of feel of just a slightly different end of extreme environments. And this picture is actually taken from my mission. That's me on the right, but on the left is Megan Benkin, or Megan McArthur, who is actually on board the International Space Station right now as part of the SpaceX crew. So like talking to all of the other medics and working with extreme environments medicine, one of the things that you will learn in dealing in these environments, you will work alongside, you will train alongside some of the very best teams in the entire world. And it's one of the core components that I suppose drives me and I suppose the rest of this team into these extraordinary environments to practice medicine.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, everybody, for those brilliant presentations. It's so, you know, I know everybody here, but it's still so brilliant to hear everybody's stories and stuff. Before we go to a question and answer session, what I wanted to highlight, there's you know, a recurring theme is, and I think it holds true with the Explorers Club as well as with WEM, it's a place where we can all feel normal because people don't really understand why we would want to do that, why we would want to get cold at the side of mountains, why we would want to get altitude sickness, why we would want to take some of these risks. But with this community that we're speaking to at the Explorers Club, you know, we get to feel normal and mix of like-minded, you know, individuals that can, you know, share our passion for adventure and adversity to a degree, and expeditions. This is a pre-recorded session, so most of us are going to return for the live question and answer in New York. It makes us feel like we're being quite sort of international and sort of going to the West End. But what I would like to thank everybody that's on this session, and also ask Will whether he has any comments from as a medical director's point of view about the presentations and, you know, the privilege of speaking to the Explorers Club.
Thanks, Mark. Yeah, I really enjoyed everyone's presentations, and it's just so interesting to hear how everyone's just brings something different to the table. I think this was a great showcase of the diversity of skills and backgrounds that exist within this emerging medical specialty. You know, like Mark's into diving and Jamie's into the cold, complete nutcase. Laura does a bit of rowing and high performance stuff, and there's Rich with his incredible overland trip, and Laura McArthur with her tropical medicine, and that insane story where you stumbled across that road traffic accident in the middle of the Australian outback with dead people. It's just unbelievable what we're all doing, and it's just such a privilege to be part of it and to count you amongst my friends and colleagues. So awesome, guys, great work. And yeah, I hope at the Explorers Club you are inspired by what we do, because we're certainly inspired by the work you do and the things that your members have done over the years, all the world firsts that they've rocked up, the corners of the globe, the oceans, mountains and space that they've been to as explorers and pioneers. So yeah, it's a huge privilege for you to welcome us to share our extreme medicine endeavor with you. Yeah, back to you, Mark.
Thank you, Will. Thank you, everybody, once again. And time now for questions and answers.
Okay, we're live. I want to thank all our presenters tonight for joining us. Before we start with the Q&A session, I wanted to do a few housekeeping matters. I'm getting some feedback here, sorry. Few housekeeping matters. This Thursday, Chapter Connect is a Canadian chapter with George Karunis as the chapter chair. Next Monday is World Turtle Day. And the lecture series, the Explorers Club lecture series, will be dealing with that. Our guests will be Callie Vanderturf, Fabian Cousteau, and Saprasia Dorini. And one other thing, this series that we're doing, this show that we're doing tonight is a pilot really for a series that we want to put together on expedition medicine for the future. So if there are any healthcare professionals who are watching this and want to participate in the show, as it moves forward, please contact Ann Passer at the Explorers Club. Okay, so let's get on with our question and answer session here. First question I have is, From Luna Xiao, the question is, when Starlinks and other similar projects complete satellite launches and start to beam internet signals to most of the world, telemedicine will become more practical. What are your thoughts on setting up a global tele-extreme medicine center to help explorers and locals at remote corners? Mark Ogrifa, probably for you to take this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So as we found over the last year, telemedicine has become more and more prominent in so many different areas of medicine. And I suppose no more so than extreme environments medicine, of trying to deliver healthcare into some of the most remote regions of the world. So one of the groups that I work with, Global Med, and that provides secure telemedicine for a number of different assets around the world, is actively exploring the concept of using assets like the Starlink network for the potential of actually pushing this out. So working in conjunction with either World Extreme Medicine or any of the expedition medicine groups that are out there, I think this is going to venture into an area over the next couple of years where we're going to be able to push the concept of telemedicine into some of the remotest areas of the world. Another organization I work with called the Team 5 Foundation specializes in trying to bring healthcare into areas of the world that have never seen Western medicine, but they're getting encumbered by Western diseases that are just now pushing further and further into these most kind of remote tribal villages and stuff like this. And I think this is an area where telemedicine is really going to come into its own in the next couple of years. And I think Mark Hannaford might have a couple of words on this as well.
Thanks, Mark, for that. And I need to say that we've been in discussion with Starlink themselves to set up some pilot studies for them in more remote areas. And we're hoping to have them at the World Extreme Medicine Conference in November in Edinburgh as well. So it'll be fascinating to hear what progress they've made, because really that sort of blanket cover of the globe with universal internet, it's going to be an amazing step forward.
Okay, next question is from Lisa Sohn. She says, what country do you think has the best medical system? And the second part of the question is, what basic medical knowledge do you recommend for everyone who's exploring around the world on expeditions?
Jamie, the question which about the best medical system, I think that's pretty hard to answer. So we'll leave that to people who are probably better informed about international medical systems. But Jamie, do you want to talk about, in terms of expedition medicine, what training, what kit would you carry in your backpack?
So I feel, for me personally, it's always very important to balance the medicine, the technical skills of your medicine with the technical skills of the environment you're going into. So there's no point in learning about heat stroke and stuff if you're going to go to the North Pole, because you're just not going to come across it. So find out someone who's going there and doing those things and has been there and done that, and find out what problems they came across and how did they overcome them. So it's very environment specific. You can't, it's just like your kit, all of your kit in your physical toolbox, whether it's a down jacket for a cold mountain, or a waterproof jacket for a Welsh mountain, or indeed, a sun hat for the tropics. It's all very, very environment specific. So I guess the top things for me would be the ability to have clean water is massively important wherever you are, both for yourself sustainably and so you can look after others. And Mark talks about his prolonged field care, hydration is really important in that. So the ability to have clean water and the ability to have shelter from whatever environment you're in. So whether that's a polar storm, a pitarack in Greenland, or a sandstorm in the Sahara Desert, you need to be able to get out of that environment and get somewhere where you can get hunkered down, safe, and be cozy and be able to do some medicine in those environments.
Laura Berry asks, is there any chance that the Aquarius will get back to non-astronaut training?
So the very short answer is yes. Aquarius is not solely designed around just astronaut training. NASA and the US Navy would be two of the core tenants. But as soon as COVID lifts, we'll actually be running another dive medicine course that will be open to both physicians and to advanced providers. So literally that combination of that diving medicine, getting exposed to saturation diving, knowing and understanding what it takes to live underwater, and then getting that experience of wearing that Kirby Morgan stainless steel hard hat. And we're hoping to have that up and running, and probably not this year with some of the restrictions that are still in place, but absolutely next year we'll probably be running that a couple of different times with a couple of different variations. So that'll absolutely be open to non-NASA personnel.
Steve Elkins asks, you'd love to know the most difficult situation that any of you have been in regarding extreme medicine situations.
I think we've all probably had quite a few of those. So who'd like to go first? Jamie, you look like you've got a story tucked up your sleeve there.
Like you said, there's a few situations that come to mind. One particularly from a mountain rescue job where we had been looking for a group of about 9 people. We found them, and it was kind of the middle of the night, very dark. And I was in a team of 3 in a search team. We found these guys, and I had these 9 people who were all soaking wet, really cold, in a group shelter, and trying to manage the kind of almost a mass casualty triage scenario with just these 9 people, and make sure I was dotting the I's and crossing the T's with everybody, was quite challenging, to be honest, in the dark, and pretty much by myself. I was the medic in that search team, so it was my responsibility, and no one was coming very fast. The guys were coming, but I was certainly alone for a long time. Over the weekend, I had a 2-vehicle RTC with 9 patients as well. So there is challenges day to day, and it's not just the medicine. It can be personal, it can be emotional, it could be all sorts of things. So I think that's why I do it, to be honest. I relish that opportunity to have that challenge, and I'm the best version of me when I'm operating at that being challenge level. I definitely get into a bit of a flow state and really kind of enjoy myself there. So yes, there's lots and lots of stories.
I think one of the things that's surprising about working in an extreme and expedition setting, because you get those physical injuries, the ones that you can kind of expect, although largely the work of a medic is that's a very small part of their job. Most of it is sort of group management, it's leadership, it's all that sort of stuff. But there's mental health problems. They take you by surprise. They're often not pre-declared, so you don't know they're within the group, and then they come to the fore because people are in an environment where they're out of their normal support structures, and they can be quite tricky to deal with. That's certainly sort of one of the most interesting ones I've had with somebody running naked around a glacier in Kazakhstan, sadly suffering from health problems, but they're tricky to deal with. Mark, have you got anything you want to add? And Laura, do you want anything to add to those stories?
So there's one that I have that it didn't quite come to the medical emergency it was going to be, but it really kind of highlights the nature of some of the environments that we work in. And kind of Jamie hit the nail on the head. As a medic in an extreme environment, it forces you to be your very best self, because you're without resource, you're without a team, and you are the sole provider, sole decision maker. And the mission that I was on for Aquarius, Nemo 21, we actually had a family of bull sharks that decided to take a very keen, close interest in both the crew and the habitat. And we had one dive one day where the bull sharks literally started to circle the aquanauts when we were literally about almost 900 feet away from the habitat. And one of the concepts that came into play was we're down in saturation. You cannot come back up to the surface. And if a shark went and decided to go and take a chunk out of one of the aquanauts, possibly on the sea floor, it was going to come to the point where we would have to deal with that traumatic injury on the sea floor, get somebody back to Aquarius, put them into a 15-hour decompression at the same time as dealing with that trauma injury. And one of the things that it really replicated was this mindset, both physiologically and physically, that Aquarius and that mission is designed to replicate that 15-hour emergency descent from the International Space Station, and all of the components of the mission environment, the extreme environment, the medical component, and that concept of teamwork and how do you deal with that emergency in one of the most extreme environments, either on or below the surface, really brought so many aspects of this into play. And it emphasizes the teamwork component, it emphasizes the medical component, and what it really reinforces is for any of these extreme environments, the level of preparation and war gaming that you need to do before you go into this environment to deal with any of these contingents, really one of your keys to success.
Laura, and I know you became a part-time dentist in on your Russia trip. So, but I don't imagine that was the least of your tribulations.
No, but yeah, you're right, Mark. I mean, that was one of my highlights. I think now I ended up sort of having to fix his tooth twice, which yeah, much to most probably Burgess and any other dentist's dismay with kind of actually what I did, having to file a tooth with my nail file that actually I'd previously used. But no, I guess the same on that trip was coming back to sort of a couple of points that have already been raised. We came around a corner, and we came across a significant RTA, and you know, I'm not like kind of these guys that sort of that's my day-to-day job. So I'd got all of the kit and caboodle. I sort of carried the kit for us to be best prepared for our team, but I hadn't envisaged coming across and having to deliver that to Joe Bloggs on the street. And suddenly we're in the middle of Russia. I didn't, you know, we had no access. We did know, you know, there was no access to a neuro unit, and this person had gone straight through a windscreen and was in a, well, it was fatal way. But of course, in my assessment, you've got all of that process of going through your head of having to make the call. So I'm still feeling a pulse. So I'm thinking I'm going to need to use all the gubbins, but I've only got 30 minutes worth of oxygen, and this person's going to need that for a heck of a lot longer and a lot more sort of input. And then the ambulance turns up and they've just got a stethoscope around their neck and a mattress in the back of the van and no other kit. So I was well more equipped than any other person that arrived. But therefore, how much do you then continue to give, given the fact that they're not going to be able to get to hospital too soon? So yeah, that was one of my most challenging and one of the biggest learning curves I've ever had. And it was thanks to the WEM guys that I then debriefed with the docs afterwards to sort of understand when actually you have to make the call, that you're not going to be able to make the impact that you sort of, you know, you sort of envisage. So yeah, it was a bit of definitely a challenging experience that taught me a lot in those remote environments of how much you can actually deliver.
Yeah, I just have some comments that I wanted to read from, one's from Chris Kostman. He says, this has been an absolutely incredible program. Every speaker was so thorough, but quick. There was not a dead second in the whole program. Really great visuals too. Wow, I'd almost think they all went to professional speaking school. Impressive. And another comment from Garrett Cooper. Amazing presentation. I'm already enrolled in the program at Exeter to begin in September. I'm getting excited about it.
Brilliant. We'll see him there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, question from Scott Eder. Planning on attending conference in Edinburgh in November. What are the odds of opening for vaccinated Americans? Anybody have an idea?
I'll pick that one up. It will depend on international travel regulations, to be honest. I think because we're of a certain size, we will be requesting that people have a vaccination certificate or have a negative test before entering to the conference. So I think and given that we do have a reasonable number of people coming from the States, including from NASA, I think the chances are very good, but it's subject to international travel regulations, and this pandemic has certainly had its twists and its turns. So at the moment, I would say it seems good.
Great. See, next question here is from Laura Berry. And she says, when Mark presented his work at the Dive into Space event in Dublin back in 2016, we could see the passion of space exploration in his eyes. Mark, did you apply for the ESA Current Astronauts Open application?
It's on the long finger. I'm working on it, but yes, I will apply.
And okay, this one's from Luna Shao again. Can any of the doctors share with us their own biohacks or fitness training method that keep you healthy and fit while practicing extreme medicine?
You know, it's an interesting question, one that I thought actually would be simple to answer, because by the nature of what you're doing, generally there's a reasonable level of physical activity. But that said, extreme medicine is about combining humanitarian disaster, expedition, wilderness, space. There's a lot of those environments and those ways of working where actually your fitness does degrade, because if you're in a refugee camp, if you're in a responding to sudden onset disaster, actually having some fitness hacks is quite important. And I see that Richard Wayne Hobson is joined us. Hopefully he can get his camera and his microphone to work, and we might ask him. But Jamie, you're probably closest to those hacks than we are.
Yeah, well, again, I think it's very environment specific. How I keep myself fit and healthy on a day-to-day on the ambulance is very different to how I keep myself fit and healthy on a Norwegian glacier or a polar expedition. I think Laura, being the performance manager, has probably got some interesting insights, probably a bit better than me.
It was funny, wasn't it, Jamie? We were only just talking a minute ago on the chat about actually performance when you're sleep deprived on shift patterns that you guys all have to do as medics and paramedics. So, I mean, there's multiple ways. I think certainly sleep depot is really important. That's kind of your biggest thing that's going to knock off your cognition and your decision making, and fundamentally, depending on what it is you're doing, but that's quite a crucial thing from a safety perspective, depending on the expedition. There's some great research out there that shows about actually dexterity decision making being quite delayed with mountaineers, for instance, that end up trekking up, and like the last mountain stop, they're desperate to get asleep to then summit early doors the next morning, and they end up taking sleeping tablets, and those sleeping tablets have a significant impact on dexterity, fine motor, and kind of decision-making skill sets, which, so it's the worst bloody thing to be taking when you need to be drawing on those skills at the top of a mountain. So but yeah, that information isn't quite out there. I think, you know, there's the things around the sleep depot perspective and we come back to it ourselves. We have to look after ourselves in order for us to have sustained high performance output to provide to anybody that we're caring for and we're supporting. And that comes down to actually getting the cat naps when we need to. So for instance, next week I've got a 48-hour sort of straight hour on, hour off with 2 riders. So technically I might not sleep for, say, 72 hours straight, but I'll need to get 10-minute cat naps, just, you know, when I can, sleeping next to the rider as often as possible, because otherwise I'm either going to make poor decisions or I'm not going to be able to deliver what I need to keep those wheels turning and set the world records that they want to set. So sleep depot is key. Hydration obviously is normally absolutely crucial, and it's the very thing that tends to go. And given, as these docs and medics will know already, sort of with all the COVID stuff and the amount of PPE kit you're having to wear, your sweat rate is most probably through the roof in different, you know, different conditions, different temperatures. So it's the very thing that tends to go, and it's the very thing that will maintain your performance. And then obviously nutrition as well, like kind of that, but hydration, as we all know, you're not going to last 3 days without hydration. You can last 3 weeks, potentially up to 3 weeks without fuel, and you can only last about 8 days without sleep. So sleep, hydration, fueling are your 3 fundamental basics of making sure you look after number 1, and then the conditioning side of things is sort of your secondary add-ons after that.
So Scott Tragesser asks if a registered nurse can be involved in these programs, or do they need to be a nurse practitioner?
So Tim, the range of opportunities, to be honest, that are available. I'm not sure whether the questions directed at the MSc program that we run, or whether the concept of extreme medicine, but the range of opportunities available, you know, encompass virtually every sort of healthcare professional, because the concept of extreme medicine is about building a community of medics who are dedicated to providing remote medicine at the best levels. But it's about sharing opportunities, about sharing research, about sharing networks and knowledge across the boundaries of medicine that were typically, formerly perhaps more siloed, you know, the extreme medicine, the disaster and humanitarian medicine, you know, the tactical medicine, actually building it into one community, so that you know, knowledge and advances and best practice are all shared, and actually shared in all those different silos, and actually so that there isn't one silo, that it's actually a big community of people sharing knowledge. So yes, absolutely, there are opportunities for all sorts of healthcare professionals, because the gamut of those environments is so wide.
Well, that's pretty much it for the questions for tonight. I want to thank all of our panelists for participating in this show. It's very informative, and I think it's a great lead for the series that we're planning on putting forward on an expedition medicine for the future. And hopefully some of you, all of you, can join us in the future on one of these programs as well.
Thank you, Tim. And I'd just like to welcome Richard's just come off a night shift on the helicopter jammer. So he's literally just joined us. So welcome to him as he heads home.
Hi, folks. Hey, good evening. I'm sorry that I couldn't join you earlier. As Mark said, I've been on the air ambulance this evening. So I hope you enjoyed the talks, and I'm sorry I didn't get to answer any of your questions.
Thanks for joining us, Richard. Better late than never.
But Tim, thank you to yourself and the Explorers Club for hosting us. We're really looking forward to coming to see you in New York when we have the opportunity, when life returns to normal. But thank you for hosting us this evening as well.
You're very welcome. Thank you. Bye, everyone, and we'll see you next week.
Goodbye.